Okay, welcome everyone. We are so glad to have you here. My name is Chani Gross, and I am the law clerk for Elizabeth Carter LLC Esquire. And we're just here to bring you this interview series. First, we would like to thank our sponsors at the Law for Economic Democracy. They are in partnership with Elizabeth L. Carter at her firm, and so they have been so gracious to host this interview series. And to just give you a brief reason why we're doing this, the purpose of this interview is to expose law students to the opportunities that exist within securities law. We're specifically highlighting Black women at this time in securities law for various reasons, but the most reason in particular is representation. Black women right now are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, and they need adequate legal representation that can create unique strategies to improve their success and sustainability. So with our first interview, we are going to start with interviewing Elizabeth L. Carter, and I'm so excited. I'm going to give her a brief introduction, and then I'll let her give her kind of own, and then we'll get started. I encourage you all to participate. I know you all are muted at this time, but feel free to drop questions in the chat, and we will get to them towards the end. So about Elizabeth, she's a trailblazer for our community. She has significant experience in business law, nonprofit law, urban planning, community development, and government relations and policy. She aims to democratize business capital and securities law in the securities legal space, specifically crowdfunding securities, through her firm by providing accessible legal services to underrepresented business leaders. So hello, Elizabeth, welcome.
Thank you, Shanique. Wonderful introduction. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you all for attending our first interview of the interview series. I'm super excited to start this. As Shanique mentioned, really the prime motivation is to encourage representation and to really highlight the opportunities in such a specific area of the law. I know when I was a law student, I didn't see securities law as anything pertaining to what I wanted to do. So I'm hoping that this opens the doors of opportunities for others, especially attorneys of color and women, to see this as a viable legal profession for them as well.
Okay, so we can go ahead and get started. And I know I gave them a little intro on you, but is there anything I left out or you would like to include to let our audience know?
No, I think you did a wonderful job. Thank you. Actually, more than enough.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll just get started with the first simple question. What exactly is crowdfunding securities?
Okay, so the way I like to explain it, I start off with what people know or are more familiar with. So more people obviously are familiar with the field of law, right? They may not know what lawyers do exactly, but they have some understanding that obviously law exists, lawyers exist. So if we look at it in that frame of big umbrella, we have law, and underneath law we have business law, and underneath business law we have securities law, and underneath securities law we have crowdfunding securities law. And I would even say my firm falls even more of a niche where underneath crowdfunding securities law, we focus specifically on underrepresented business issuers. So really a niche and focusing on aiming to democratize business capital by highlighting and supporting business owners of color that normally wouldn't probably see a securities attorney or wouldn't understand or have the means to raise capital in this alternative way. But specifically, like I said, securities law is an aspect of business law, which really covers the compliance around raising capital from investors. So, and without going into much history, that the field of securities law goes back to 1933 during the Great Depression, where obviously the financial markets were we're going into recession now, but back then what I hear, right, wasn't there, was even more stark, where people's investment was which is really just gone, and it was not protected. I mean, banks weren't, even right now we can put our money in banks and we're safe that, oh, they have insurance, but before that, this did not have insurance. And so 1933 was a way, one of the host of laws that the Congress passed to protect people and their money, investors, and particularly against investment in private businesses. And so ultimately, securities law is just simply the way the SEC would tell it is designed to protect the investor. It's designed to promote capitalization of businesses. So it has two missions: to promote small business or business growth, in this case, crowdfunding small business growth through making the means of capitalizing them easier, and then also at the same time protecting investors. So crowdfunding specifically targets small businesses, and those particularly that are not interested, or at least at the beginning, interested in becoming public. So there's this idea of becoming public through the IPO, trading on the stock market. We're talking about businesses that are not necessarily going towards that route. We're talking about businesses who may need funding to expand their operations, small businesses who may need funding to, I don't know, pay for some software that would enhance their business operations. And for the most part, small enough to the point where they don't need more than $50 million. And although some people may say, well, that's a lot, but we're talking the big field of securities, and then it can run in multi-billions, right? And so small business crowdfunding securities law, again, targets small businesses, those who need to raise, I would say, 1 million to 50 million. I say 1 million because we have the regulation crowdfunding, which is a platform or portal. Some people may have heard of that. We have the direct public offering, or the 504, which is $5 million. And then we have the Reg A, which can go up to $50 million. And I know this is all like, what is that? But just to give some intro to it. But also I think it's good to differentiate crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding, from donation crowdfunding, like the GoFundMe, and the rewards-based crowdfunding. I often run into people who get these confused and mixed up. Although all of it is part of crowdfunding, we're speaking specifically about investment crowdfunding, where expectations or profits or return on profit is expected, and passive investment is given.
It sounds like you have to do a lot to help clients navigate this area in a way that they can be successful and be sustainable. And on top of that, you run your own practice. So can you kind of tell us, what is it like running your own practice? How do you define success with a solo firm? And when we get to it later, just running your solo practice during the pandemic.
Yeah, I think I like running my own practice. I will say that law school didn't prepare me or a lot of students, to become their own, I guess, practitioners of their firms or managers of their firms. But the ironic part is that most lawyers are solo practitioners or employees of smaller firms. And so it makes sense to really highlight, this question is really good because it makes sense to encourage those who have already been thinking about it but have been dissuaded, because oftentimes people say you should wait a certain amount of years, certain amount of practice. And although that's not a bad idea, but I don't want those who are thinking to jump right into it right after law school. That is not for them, and I think it is. I think for me, what helped me was having mentors, people that I can call on, that ask questions, who've been practicing for 20, 30, 40 years. And then also to obviously being part of certain networks and certain associations to be able to get the knowledge that I needed in terms of the actual, not necessarily the practice of law, which also is feasible to go to certain like solo small business conferences, but also the law field itself. And for me, I think you have to have a certain mindset that you're growing and building something. It's like raising a child. So you don't expect the child to come out the womb walking and talking, right? You understand that there's a process. And so the first year for me, I understand it's a year of marketing and to really getting your business out there and to really showcase what it is that you do. Why should people come to you? Do workshops, do webinars, do meet and greets. And that's what I've done in the past. And that's what I'm doing now as I'm rebranding the firm to become a niche practice in securities law. And it's been good. And the way I define measure, I think it varies by year. So this year being mostly a marketing year, the measure of success is how many people have attended webinars, how many people, not even just how many, I think quality over quantity matters the most as well. What is the feedback? What are the real relationships are you building? The partnerships that you're acquiring in the process. And I think, definitely I've been able to do that. And ironically, despite COVID, those networks and those partnerships have been able to come to fruition despite our stay-at-home orders, in terms of at least the networking piece and to being able to reach people virtually. And that just really required some pivoting. right? So this thinking of law practice as being an in-person brick and mortar practice, and also now realizing to be a virtual business. So it's fun, it's creative, um, it's freedom, but it also has its downfalls. And I think sometimes we just have to manage our expectations of you're starting from scratch. You know, you see businesses that are already up and running. You shouldn't compare yourself to, you know, the largest law firm in the United States, right? It's just not, it just doesn't make sense to do that. I mean, they have 150 years on you, right? So it's just a matter of managing your expectation and, you know, going slowly, knowing that every win doesn't have to be a huge win. And to me, like I said, every year the success will differ. Definitely, if you're getting those networks and those contacts and those relationships building, whether it's clients or colleagues or those, you know, other support systems, I think that's success in itself.
Great. I like that you said that it's a time of pivoting or being innovative. I think that's something that we have definitely learned to focus on during the pandemic, which brings me to my next question about your clients. How are you managing marketing to prospective clients while also simultaneously focusing on existing clients and what like their deals and the business entities that they're trying to um, construct?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's about a matter of knowing how to delegate, when to delegate, and to get a team. So with the marketing, you know, for instance, I utilize someone to help actually redo the website. So you'll see a new website after, you know, today, really. And then also, you know, just inquiring about different other methods of, you know, social media marketing and what does that look like. And also you, Shanique, you know, being a law clerk, helping me not only with, you know, the aspect and also the education piece that comes along with law clerkship, but also you understanding the management side and helping assist with that as well. And so I think that's just what it's about. It's about being able to delegate because it will get overwhelming. And again, the first year, most of it's marketing anyway. So a lot of my time you'll see is mostly towards that. You know, even if it's one or two, maybe a few clients, most of the bulk of the work is still marketing. Now, the second year may look different, right? I only can go off what I've seen in the past. By the time the second year rolls around, it's almost like, you know, there's more referrals at that point. And then third year is even more. And so it just really gets what marketing, it starts to look differently. So right now, the management between marketing and clientele is great because like I said, it's probably 80% marketing, 20% client work. So it's a good manage or good balance.
Okay. And speaking of your website, I frequently see on your social media, your website, that you specialize in democratizing business capital in the securities legal space. So, what does that mean for you, or what does that look like in the
Yeah,
grand
yeah.
scheme of things?
So democratizing means access, right? Accessibility. So crowdfunding itself was designed to do just that. It was to democratize capital formation for small businesses to make it more accessible for many more small businesses to actually get the capital that they need. Whereas before, I should go back, you know, Jobs Act of 2012 is really what made the crowdfunding, investment crowdfunding possible. So that act amended the securities law of 1933 to allow for small businesses to raise a certain amount of capital. And like I said, up to 50 million now with Reg A, without having to register with the Securities Exchange Commission or the SEC. And what's important is that registering with the SEC costs hundreds of thousands of dollars per year. And so, as we know, small businesses, you know, most small businesses will be able to afford that cost every single year for compliance and conforming with SEC rules and regulations. And so, what the Jobs Act of 2012 did was allow for those businesses to be exempt, to not have to do that, right? So, what they have to do now is undergo certain filing requirements, and before that, of course, that requires some compliance measures there, but it's a lot cheaper or a lot more affordable, I should say, to do that than to actually go forth the actual registration, which is for larger companies that, like, you know, like Facebook did, right? Facebook registered and did IPO, right? And so you can imagine the difference between a Facebook business and a smaller, I don't know, boutique marketing firm, right? And so democratizing capital looks like crowdfunding. And then when you go even further, my firm is helping to even go further, is by opening up that access to crowdfunding to underrepresented business owners. So Black and Latinx business owners that normally would not have access to that, because even though crowdfunding made it more accessible, there's still a cost, that and still a significant cost for many businesses to even have to pay the lawyer, the marketing, the accountant, and et cetera, to then be able to raise the $1 million, even the 500,000, right? And so a lot of businesses may not have that upfront cost because it all, it also costs to start a business, period. And then you're saying, well, we need additional 15, 20, 30,000 to then pay for the startup, the upfront cost to get you to that compliance measures that's required for the investment crowdfunding. And so part of that democratizing is providing those accessible services by, flexible payment arrangements to Black and Brown business owners or Black and Latinx business owners. Also includes, different strategic measures of gaining more capital that will help you pay for the upfront before you even get to, the capital raising for the actual offer. So what does that look like? It can look like, coming up with a strategic plan for bringing in non-security capital, right? And we can go on what a security is. So when we talk about security, we're talking about a passive investment where there's an expectation of return on profit. And it's so passive is important because if you're managing an LLC, for instance, and you're investing your money in LLC, that investment is not a security because you're actually managing that. You're managing that. But if you have a third party come in and say, I want to give you money for you to manage, Shanique, then that is a security because that person is expecting you to manage and they're expecting a profit in return. So in that case, like I said, there's a way to combine that type of, or maybe donation funding, right? That there's an expectation of return to be able to help assist with the upfront cost. Or I just recently joined the board of Self-Help Credit Union with the intent of coming up with a product, a credit union product that would allow for that bridge capital, right? Because there is a in between, from $0 to, I don't know, like I said, $20,000, $50,000 to be able to help you with that upfront cost to then be able to leverage that to gain and to get the 1 million. So that's what it means to democratize. It's just coming up with unique strategies that fits more with the clientele that you're working with, understanding the challenges that Black founders may have, right? Understanding the culture sensitivities that they are accustomed to so that you're better able to communicate and better able to understand their needs and then to come up with, again, those out of the box strategies for helping them.
Right. That's great. I know we mentioned that the purpose of this interview series was to kind of expose law students to let them know that securities law is a viable option for them and they can make a career out of this. So can you give them kind of like a primer of like what your typical client looks like, what companies you might work with, whether it's entrepreneurs or if it's nonprofits, just so they can know like what their clientele base might look like if they decide to pursue this as a career?
Yeah, I think, my particular clients, I'm open to nonprofits, small businesses, as well as cooperatives, which is a type of small business, but those who use the services, so the customers are also the owners, so the workers are also the owners. So I represent those three types of businesses and in between, I should say. And in terms of the actual work, my work can consist of, like right now, currently, I'm drafting an operating agreement for an LLC, which will become the general partner of a limited partnership. And then that limited partnership is going to do the crowdfunding offer. So there's as we said before, it's business law. And so I think those who are interested in securities law, you definitely should have a background in business formations, a background in contracts, because though operating agreement is a contract, you're going to have to draft a term sheet, the investment contract, which we call subscription agreement, that is tied to the offer, and that's all part of the whole, the investment deal. And so that's what it looks like. It looks like a lot of advising and consulting. It looks like a lot of strategizing. It looks like a lot of research, a lot of drafting and writing a memo so I can communicate with the client what their best options are. Yeah, did I answer the question? Sorry.
Yes, you did. You did. I think that's perfect. Just wanting to give law students an idea of not only the work you do, but who you do the work with. So that was a perfect answer. Moving on. So we mentioned that Black women are the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs. So, in an industry where Black women are starting businesses at a higher rate than any demographic but received inadequate funding, what role would you say you play to combat that?
Right. I think, again, going back to the previous answer of democratizing business capital, I think my role as a Black woman attorney matters because of the cultural sensitivities that is needed to represent another Black woman founder, right? Or again, the ability to understand some of those unique challenges that affect Black businesses and specifically Black women. Because as you just stated, when we see different initiatives that target people of color or target women, it can say, oh, women and people of color, but ironically, it misses Black women. If you look at the statistics, even with funding, say for instance, with venture capital funding with small businesses, or even any other business capital that goes towards small businesses, Black women are the least likely to be funded, even though the initiative may say people of color or women. And oftentimes women means white women, people of color means male of that category. And so it's important that you have a support team like an attorney who understands that, right? So who understands, once you know the problem, you know how to maneuver around the problem. You'll know how to, again, come up with those strategies and those unique sort of, strategies of how to go around those barriers. Like I said, with the funding upfront costs, right? To someone who understands that as a Black founder, you may not have family members that can just give you $1,000, right? Or you may not have friends who can do that. Matter of fact, your neighborhood may not have a lot of people who can give sort of this upfront capital for you, and you're really on your own. And so instead of me saying, well, okay, we'll come back when you have the funding, or, if you can't, you don't have the 15,000 now to do, a regulation crowdfunding, then you may not be, in position to do one. Because if I were to do that, then A may never come back, and B may never see this as a actual tool for them. Because you gotta understand too, being Black in America, you're already marginalized. You already feel that the systems are not there to serve you. And so how do we make crowdfunding more, I guess, an option that, those who, traditionally marginalized communities say, no, this is for us. And why is it for us? Because we have an attorney who's accessible. We have an accountant who's accessible. We have people who understand that we can't just come up with you up to the table with this grant. And it's not all, let's be clear. It's not all Black founders. It's not all Latinx founders, but when we're talking about, systematic racism, that also includes, disproportionate, unequal wealth distribution. And so what happens is that you'll have people who may not understand that it costs 50,000 to do a Reg A, and may not have the 50,000 to do, or to pay a lawyer. That's just the lawyer fee. And so again, I think being a Black woman attorney, understanding that the clientele that I'm working with, this is the first time they're doing something like this, and most likely will be the first time they're doing something like this, and won't necessarily have the upfront capital. I have to be culturally sensitive to that. I have to, think strategically about that. Otherwise, my mission to help democratize capital wouldn't play out, right?
Thank you. I think you highlighted so perfectly why it's so important for minorities to be in this space, why representation is so important, and why this is a viable option for law students that may or may not be interested. Just letting them know that their law degree can go a long way in their own communities. So thank you for that, and thank you for the work that you do. Um, so just to touch back on the running your own firm, what would you say are the disadvantages or advantages of doing that, just to give law students that idea that, have it in their mind that want to go solo or are not sure what they want to do in their career yet? What made you make that decision, and what are the most rewarding experiences from that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the disadvantages, I guess, if you can call them that, because I see opportunities and disadvantages as well. But disadvantages would be that understanding that as Black attorneys, and we're speaking about Black attorneys, are represent only 5% of the entire lawyership, right, of lawyers in the United States of America. And then as a Black woman, we represent less than 2%, right? And so as a Black woman attorney, I understand that I'm almost like a unicorn in a sense. And then it gets even smaller with securities law, right? And so understanding that it comes with its own challenges, including, especially a solo attorney, including maybe harder to build a bill of clients, right? Because people have to find you. right? People have to, oh, she exists, right? She's not just, I'm more hidden than others would be, right? If you can say that. But then on the flip side, I mean, depending on how well you do your marketing, they're not hidden, right? Because then you are the one, oh, she's a Black woman attorney. I haven't seen that before, right? So it's a matter of how you just really turn your disadvantages into advantages, and really promote it through your marketing and really being intentional about reaching your audience. For me, I want to be intentional about reaching the law students, right? Because they may not, like I said, I didn't know that securities was a viable option for me and my interest in community development, my interest in helping disenfranchised communities with businesses and real estate. And if I knew that earlier on, I would have started securities a lot earlier, right? I would have known like, oh no, okay, we need capital. Banks are not the only form of capital. Even when even so, within Black and brown communities, we don't have too many traditional banking institutions or financial institutions that actually serve the community. And so we just have this hole. But now that I am in a position and do know more, my job is to also reach back out and not to just wait for someone to come to me, right? And so that's the advantage of, I guess, an advantage and disadvantage. So on one hand, it's a disadvantage because you have to work a little harder, but then the advantage is that, you are able to, once you do work harder, once you do get to a point where you're more visible, you do become that person, that go-to person, so to speak, that people know that they can trust that you will take care of them and their needs.
Perfect. I don't think a little hard work ever hurt anybody.
Mhm.
Um, so at this time, I just want to encourage anybody who has questions to put them in the chat, and we will get to them in about the next 5 to 10 minutes. But I have just a few more questions, and these are specifically for the law students. What are some of the best resources that you feel like you could offer for law students that want to dive deeper and are interested in this field?
I would say first off, I would say there's a class in your law school that regards securities law, take it. Even corporations or business associations, I think, will be a good primer. Also, any supplements that regards securities law. There's a textbook that I actually like a lot called Understanding Securities Law. Definitely very helpful. It will give you, again, a good introduction of securities law from the history to the actual legal tools. And then we'll also have footnotes that will allow you to look at further resources like case law or security releases or different regulations or rules. So I would say definitely get the literature that you need, but also if there's in your school any corporate law society or any clubs or internships, if you can find an internship that would allow you to get more knowledge in business law and specifically securities law, definitely do it. And then also, again, having, I think, that mentorship with another attorney that's in this space is valuable, because that attorney can help you and grow with you with your career as well, from beginning to end. And it definitely can, because it's one thing to read, but you definitely need to see it. And the practice of law is something that you can't know until you actually practice it. So definitely get those practical skills down. In clinics, I know at John Marshall, you have the clinic, the Solidarity Economy Clinic, and Renee definitely she incorporates securities law as well when it comes to cooperatives and other social economy businesses. So also take advantage of the resources that you have in front of you, for sure.
Okay, and one more question, bringing us back to the pandemic, what do you see like post-pandemic your firm doing, or what do you think it will look like? Do you see yourself getting more business, or do you think the entrepreneurship will continue to rise, or small businesses continue to grow post-pandemic?
Oh, for sure. I mean, we're already seeing it, and what we're seeing now is just more um, creativity, right? And being more creative in how we engage with one another, being more creative in how we conduct meetings and how we meet clients. And now I see people being able to have clients more so all over the country, all over the world, really, depending on what business model you have or your business you have. But because we can really reach people now, and even though we always had obviously Zoom and internet, we weren't using it in that way for the most part, right? We were using it, I know for me, bare minimum, right? I'm checking my email, I may go on a website or two, but I'm not really truly engaging. And so now, even with my own law practice, I'm I'm in the process of learning how to even go even further and becoming more virtual. Like could I conduct a consultation with a click of a button on the website? And here I am, right? I don't know. We'll figure that out. But the idea is to, think much more futuristic, right? Like how do we, now COVID has taught lessons, like, we can't see each other in person all the time. Matter of fact, it's probably more efficient that I can just see you over the internet, right? Or over the video and a virtual call and being more, and I think also people are more comfortable with that, right? So whereas before, if someone didn't meet someone in person, they may feel a little off-putted, they feel like it's off-putting that we haven't met yet. Whereas now it's like commonplace. Okay, I don't have to necessarily meet you in person, but I'm confident that the work is getting done. I'm confident that, we're effectively building a relationship just by virtue on the phone or through the computer.
Perfect. I like that. I definitely think it's amped our accessibility and made us, more flexible than we were before. But before we get to the questions in the chat, is there anything else you would like to highlight or any advice you would like to give to the law students or to our audience here today?
I do want to harp on the definition of security just a little more, because I think people, or any investment crowdfunding versus non-investment crowdfunding, I think it's still like people are catching up because crowdfunding is still new. But what I am seeing that crowdfunding is becoming more popular, investment crowdfunding, or just all crowdfunding. But just to reiterate, we have, donation-based crowdfunding, which is like GoFundMe. You put a issue up, or even in your business, say I'm looking for a certain amount of dollars, and no money is being exchanged, or I'm sorry, no profit is being expected, right, from that person who's putting money. They're just simply giving a donation. The other side is rewards-based crowdfunding, which is also similar to donation, but there is something you give in return for people's investment, people's investment. But the key is that the return is just simply a token or reward, and not that so valuable that it's construed as a security. And then the third is investment security, which is, an investment of money, a passive investment where people are giving the business money, not managing it themselves, not managing the business themselves, but expecting that person, the manager that they give the money to manage that the investment so that they can get a return at some later date in the future, something that's valuable in relation to the investment. Now, all investment, I should say, is a risk. So there could be a risk of you putting your money in, you never get anything back, but that's not the point. The point is that you do expect, to get something back, with the understanding that it's a possibility that it's not. And then I guess security, just again, a passive, it's broadly defined under federal and state statutes, but essentially it's a passive investment where there's an expectation of a return on your investment through profits, right? So if those two are together, then it's most likely a security. If one or the other is missing, then it's not a security. So for instance, if you don't expect a profit, it's probably a donation, right? And then the last thing, the advice I will say with law students, just get out there, meet people, get as much skills and experience as possible, because you never know what you'll end up and how you'll end up and what you'll be interested in. And just have fun with it. And any of those who are interested in opening their own law firms, don't be afraid, meet people, get mentorships, maybe work for a firm and just kind of get that experience and just get that confidence. It's all about confidence for the most part.
Yes, thank you so much. And I like that you said it, like, the law students, we need to know our stuff, because I think it's just so amazing that you can spit off all these rules and statutes and then relate it and make it seem like it's so simple and relatable. Like, that's amazing. So you definitely, like, you have to know it, you have to be smart. And so thank you for sharing that with us. So now we will get to the questions in the chat, and we have 2 so far. So while we have time, you guys feel free to throw questions in. First, we'll start with this question. It says, do you recommend working for an established firm before going solo?
So I didn't. So if I tell a little story about how I got started, my first year I worked for state government. I was a assistant legislative director, legislative aide. The second year I worked for city government as assistant legislative director, but also special counsel. And I was there where I actually got more transactional legal experience regarding redevelopment, land use, economic development, which actually gave me the confidence to start my own firm. So I would say from maybe 2 years, I was employed, and it took the end of that second year for me to say, okay, I'm ready. but I've known people who did it right after law school. I think those who do it right after law school, again, it's all about the confidence. I think it depends on how you expanded your law school career. Like for instance, if you were working for a firm or if you're working with closely with an attorney, that you were able to get that mentorship and that understanding of the business of law, which means, not, you could be a business attorney and don't know how to manage your own law firm, right? So you need that insight into administrative work, marketing, all how to client development, how do you go out and build your clientele, but then also, of course, your, full ground understanding of the business. So I would say it doesn't hurt. I think it depends on your own confidence level. If you want to work for an established firm, I think it's definitely, it will give you that experience, but be careful because I think the bigger the firm, the less knowledge you'll have in actually the workings of the firm. So I would recommend maybe a smaller firm or even a solo, because you'll get a full round picture of managing a law firm, but also, the actual, you'll get, like, first is a case, you'll be able to work the beginning to the end, right? And not just one particular aspect, not just one memo. You'll actually work the beginning to the end of a case. So I'll say yes, yes to a smaller and solo firm if you feel that you don't have the confidence yet, but you don't have to. Just get the client, the network and the mentorship. And I know for me, I'm open to helping another attorney, right? I'm not, and that's has been my experience as well. We're open to helping each other.
Great. I love that support, and I love that you offer that too, because so many times, like, we feel like we can't get started on things because we don't have that representation or we don't have a mentor. So to the next question, Peggy says, wonderful interview. Thank you. Do your services extend to helping a client determine the amount of securities and non-securities capital they need to raise, or does that type of guidance come from a different scope of practice by a lawyer or another type of business professional?
Peggy, I'm so happy to see that you're on here. So that's a good question. Oftentimes we get these questions, and I do this a lot too, especially when it comes to accounting and tax. I'm like, is that my role or is that the accountant's role? Like, how do I fit in? And when it comes to business capital, what I've learned is that, my first question when I started was, do I need to help the client determine the rate of return, right? Oh, okay, well, how do you know that, or how do you come up with this 5 to 8% or 2% of return on your investment? And that's not my role as an attorney, right? So our role is to simply do the legal compliance, and the part of the strategy, so going to your question again, about determining the amount of money you would need to raise. I can help with that as a strategy. Like if, for instance, we're talking about, okay, the upfront cost of hiring an attorney. You may not have the if you wanted to do, like I said, 1 million regulation crowdfunding, the average cost of hiring an attorney is about 15,000. You may not have the 15,000, but what I could do is say, have you thought about a donation-based crowdfunding, which doesn't require an attorney, because again, it's not a security, there's no expectation of return of profit? Or have you thought about a rewards-based crowdfunding? And if you thought about the rewards-based crowdfunding, what I could do as an attorney is to help make sure that that reward is compliant, in terms of it's not so, that when we talk about not being so valuable that it can be construed as a security, because some states do construe some rewards-based crowdfunding as a security. So what I can do is offer us like a smaller package of legal support that simply consists of consultation, a couple hours here and there, that may be more affordable than actually going for to the actual the official, I guess, investment crowdfunding phase, right? So then you'll get the capital that you need from the rewards or donation to then be able to say, well, I'm ready to now do the bigger money investment acts. Can you help me with that? And then you go from there. So I guess yes and no. It just depends on what the situation is. I not necessarily I determine the amount. The client will already know what they need, and then we can come talk about what options are out there that they could explore. But again, I'm not a broker, I'm not an advisor, financial advisor, but it's more of an offshoot of my practice of being a lawyer, of more of a byproduct that sometimes come out of, okay, looking at the various options and what may be valuable for you.
Okay, thank you. Elizabeth also has another question, or not Elizabeth, I'm so sorry, I'm reading the chat. Peggy also has another question. The question says, Elizabeth, are you already teaching this material to clients and or potential clients? If not, would you consider doing some teaching?
Well, I'm not officially teaching as in like a clinical professor phase or stage, but I aim to do some education through workshops like these, or I should say webinars like these, or even material on my website to be able to get people understanding of what is this stuff anyway, right? So some of the introductory material I do help clients to understand and also try to put that out there to the public, but I will be open to actually official teaching role as well, especially to other law students.
Thank you. Cameron has a question. She says, any thoughts on how non-people of color attorneys can be better allies to Black women attorneys or law students in the legal profession? That's a great
Oh,
question.
good question, Cameron. I think it depends on the lawyer, the lawyer, the Black woman attorney that you're working with. I know for me, as a solo attorney, I think the best way to be an ally is to support the business of the law. So that can look like client referrals. It can look like just certain opportunities, access to opportunities that the Black attorney may not have access to, whether it's within the legal field or otherwise, or somewhere in the industry. And then also just support, maybe just supporting whatever initiatives that the law firm or the Black woman attorney has, or even students, and to really help gain that access. Like, for instance, if the law school doesn't have a Black woman as a mentor, right? Maybe that non-POC attorney does know someone and can refer that law student as a mentor to that student. So just merely just sort of acting as a in between, a medium of connecting other opportunities and resources.
I agree with that. Just sharing the space, offering mentorships, sponsorships. I think it's important that the Law for Economic Democracy is even sponsoring this call that we're on today. So just doing things like that, I think it goes a long way. It doesn't go unnoticed. And we have one question from Alana Jones. Alana says, correct me if I am wrong, but it sounds like securities law and more specifically crowdfunding is a way to recreate or leading to a Black Wall Street. In what ways do you think securities law will be a way to give back to Black and under-resourced communities?
Yes. Yes to your questions. I think so. Black Wall Street, is folks on the call who don't know, is mostly refers to a community in the 20s and 30s called Tulsa, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that was where it was a Black community. Of course, it was before integration, that was, viable, functioning really well financially, had a myriad of Black businesses, but was actually burned down and destroyed by both it was government sanctioned, but also sanctioned by the KKK, and government sanctioned as in through the National Guard, where they actually came in and physically destroyed the community, right, and killed lots of people, and that was happening a lot, especially in the turn of the century. But and so what's happening now is this resurgence of the Black community to regain control and ownership of land, especially in the midst of gentrification. So now we're dealing with a different type of destruction, physical destruction, or political sanctions. Destruction is when, economically, Black communities and brown communities are being displaced or bought and sold, and communities are being dispersed. And so, yes, crowdfunding is a way for a Black founder or a community to raise capital from everyday people, from your neighbors, from your customers, from your clients, from, and this is what we're called non-accredited investors. So this is what the Jobs Act also allowed, was for regular people. And I say regular as in non-wealthy. So wealthy as in, $1 million worth of net worth, $250,000 per year income. Anything below that is considered non-accredited in most definitions and under the securities law. And so what that means is someone can invest as little as $10, $50. I think the average might be $500, and be able to invest in an initiative that then goes out to buy land, using all that collective dollars to then buy land that will then be used to redevelop a community for other Black members to be able to thrive and live in. And I think as the securities law, the way it supports that, again, is by understanding that that the need is there, and that the Black business will need an attorney to help make sure that when they're asking to the community, asking for money to invest in a redevelopment project or a real estate project, that is asking legally, right? That they're not any risk of fraud or that they're disclosing certain risks, or they're disclosing certain things that so that the investor is well informed about what they're getting themselves into.
Thank you. I think it's just shows that small businesses, Black and underrepresented communities do need legal representation. And that just brings us back to the point of why it's so important to have minorities in this space that can understand their unique backgrounds and the different challenges that they face. So thank you for the work that you do. And thank you for answering that question. We have a few more minutes. Does anybody else have any other questions? Oh, we got one. Kathy says, do you help clients find investors?
No. So, and reason why I don't is the same reason why when I was doing real estate, I did not help a client find real estate. I partner with real estate agents, and agents would do that. So in the same breath, there are financial brokers that would help find investors for the client. And oftentimes when it comes to crowdfunding, though, you don't really need a broker, because the way these things are set up, crowdfunding specifically, the biggest thing about crowdfunding, the biggest advantage of crowdfunding is the public advertisement. So if you can find a medium like the crowdfunding portal, the registered crowdfunding portal, and I can think of one. There's a many. If you go through there, that portal essentially is acting as your broker by providing access to your offer or your business, and then investors are going on there and clicking a button, say, oh, I want to invest in that. Same thing with, and even outside the portal context, if you have a Reg A, you'll create your own marketing, your own website, right? And you'll do the own marketing around that website that will bring in clients or bring in investors to your offer, to your deal. So no, in that I'm an attorney, I'm not a financial broker, which has to be registered, by the way, with the SEC or other state regulators to actually become a broker and be able to bring client or investors in, because you want to make sure that whoever's advising these investors about deals, that they're doing it in a way that is informed, right? And so that's the skill that the securities regulators make sure that a person has a license to do that, just like a real estate agent has to have a license to find property. As the attorney, I simply help with the compliance and the legal strategy around the offer and the deal. But again, crowdfunding kind of helps eliminate a lot of that need for the finding of investors because of the public and general advertisement aspect of the crowdfunding.
Okay, thank you so much for answering that question. Do we have any others? No, these have all been great questions, and I love that you all are engaged and participating, and we're getting all this great knowledge from Elizabeth. I really appreciate it. I just want to take the time to plug in the rest of the interview series. If you want to learn more about securities law, this interview series is going to go on for the rest of the month of October. This is such an informative discussion that we've had here, and it's going to continue to take place. I'm so excited to get to learn from other Black women in securities. And Elizabeth, thank you for sharing this space and giving us the opportunity to gain this knowledge from you. So if you have any other thing you want to say or let us know, I think we do have a question.
What Elizabeth, yeah, I saw it. Yes, I do have partnerships with marketing firms who would help assist the clients with their marketing strategy for their crowdfunding offer. Just being in this environment, I have networks and contacts with all types of practitioners in the space, so it helps to do that, to be able to create a whole plan for the client and be able to recommend them to certain people that can help them with things that I can't help with. But no, I want to thank everyone for joining. Thank you so much for Law for Economic Democracy for sponsoring this series. Again, I think it's important for law students and other lawyers to know what securities law is, and to also understand how people of color can really get a foot in this space as well, especially where there are more and more diversified clients that are getting into raising capital and building businesses and redeveloping their communities collectively as a whole. And I want to thank you, Shanique, for assisting with this interview, but also just overall being a great law clerk and having an interest in this. I mean, you're also a unicorn. I mean, we matched and I was like, oh my God, she wants to do this. Yay. Because I think, again, it's about building an ecosystem that is really representative and supportive the new businesses that's coming forth and business of color, because again, the resources are just not there for many of us. So I just want to thank you as well for your support and just really your good job in just hosting this or moderating this interview series as well. So that's all for me.
I'm so thankful for the opportunity. I love that I get to learn from you. We do have one more question before we wrap up. Cheryl says, how can we refer to you, Elizabeth?
What I don't understand the question isn't how can Cheryl, can you clarify?
Sure, and thank you so much. I'm just wondering if we have I work at a nonprofit organization, and so if I have folks that might be interested, I work in the New York area. I would love to be able to refer and just send them your way if this
Oh,
seems
cool.
like a thing. So just do you have a website? Is
Oh
email
yeah, yeah.
better, that kind of thing?
Oh yes, for sure. So I can put the website in the chat. I can put the email address that you can have clients reach out to me as well. And thank you so much for that, Cheryl. And I definitely know folks that take root justice. So I'm just so happy that you're on this call and that we're all in this ecosystem and network and supporting one another. So thank you. And I'll put that info now. Any other questions?
Okay, before we wrap up, did anyone have any other questions? Or Cameron, did you have anything before we end the call?
Nope. Thanks. This is a great interview, and yeah, really appreciate it and look forward to hosting the other ones. And yeah, everyone who wants to snag that email address and website address, go ahead and copy and paste that into something else, because once we sign off here, you won't have access to that anymore. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So just for the recording purposes, the website is www.elcesq.com, and the email address is info@elcesq.com. That's info@elcesq.com.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank you for staying engaged and participating and just listening to us. And thank you again, Law for Economic Democracy. And thank you, Elizabeth, for this time. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you all. Thank you, Shanique.